Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Kathryn Garforth from Garforth Education, and this is the Right to Read Initiative. Today, I have the pleasure of having Michele Van Der Veen, an Ontario teacher, join me for a second time. And yesterday, we looked at her journey to the science of reading and structured literacy. And today, she's going to focus on letting us know how she uses it in her classroom. I'm really excited for today's conversation and show and tell because you brought up so many different great resources yesterday. So before we get started, can you give people a little bit of background of who you are, where you've got to where you are today, and what you're doing with your class?
Sounds good. So again, my name is Michele. I am a grade 1-2 teacher in Kitchener with the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. I've been teaching for more than 10 years, but in a permanent position for 9. And so historically, I've been always like very hands-on. I love tech. I love, I love anything STEAM related, and I discovered the science of reading. Well, I started by discovering Heggerty and what phonemic awareness was before the 2020-2021 school year, just on Facebook groups through social media. And I started using Heggerty last year, and then as our classes changed up in October around Thanksgiving, I knew I was getting a friend joining me in my class who had the profile of someone with a learning disability, dyslexia, and and his goal, or that child's goal, was to learn how to read by the end of the year, and I made it my mission to figure out how I could get that child reading by the end of the year, and we did. So I really I jumped in 2 feet and I discovered the science of reading, and I haven't looked back.
Wonderful. So tell me about your class this year. What's the makeup and what has been your approach?
Excellent. So I am grade 1-2. I'm mostly grade 1, 15 ones, and I have 6 grade 2s. And they're kind of mixed ability. I wouldn't peg anyone with an LD or dyslexia at this point, but these things turn up later on as well. And I'm not a doctor, and I don't claim to be a doctor. And so we started, on our structured literacy journey at the beginning of the year, and I started by assessing my students, so giving them a screener. And so my school board we have literacy folders. Each child from grade, well, I think it's supposed to be K to 8. I can only speak from K to 4 because those are the grades that I've taught. And in an English stream, we're an English stream school, although our school board does have French immersion. And so I knew that I wanted to move away from leveled books, and that is a big focus of my school board and many school boards in Ontario and Canada and beyond. And I wasn't sure last year. Well, I was like dabbling in structured literacy. I kind of was just grabbing all over the place, and I was still following the leveled books because I had to. That's what I thought, that I had to, and that was the mandate. And as I started learning and taking courses and investigating, I realized that I didn't want to put leveled books in front of students anymore because I am tired of kids guessing. And so what I found was that students, in kindergarten, I used to do these rainbow words where I'd give my students a ring of words and they would memorize them, and then I would give them another ring and another ring, and they were just memorizing. They were really good at memorizing and guessing. And then I went to grade 3-4, and I noticed that students would come to a word they didn't know, but they couldn't guess it because there was no picture that matches photosynthesis, which is what we used yesterday. And I talked again today in science about photosynthesis of plants, as we are learning in science. We're not learning about photosynthesis, living and non-living things, and anyways, so I wanted to figure out, how I could go about doing this. So the screener, so this year I decided I was going to like veer away from what the board was doing, and I've still done a sound assessment that the board gives, and I did the Rosner test for phonemic awareness, but I've added and I've omitted things that such as leveled books. I haven't assessed one of my students using leveled books this year. And so I started the year by I had discovered this book in the summer, How to Plan Differentiated Reading Instruction by Sharon Walpole and Michael McKenna. And I had watched a webinar with Dr. Walpole in the summer, I believe, and it was really inspiring. On YouTube, I think it had turned up on social media, and I watched it. And her aim is to provide an affordable text that teachers can use, because we know that, we talked about this yesterday. I personally purchased many of the resources I use, and that's not equitable or reasonable, really, for teachers to be expected to do this. I've just been on my own personal journey and made that decision to do it. But yeah, so one of the reasons I liked Dr. Walpole was because, she made, I think, I can't remember how much it cost, but it was under $50 at the time. And so I read through the book, and she gives lessons on, so let me talk about the screener first. So the screener is in the book, and there's also, once you buy the book, there's a link where you can access more information and more resources for your guided lessons with small groups. So in her lesson, she has there's letter recognition, sound recognition, and then phoneme. Actually, grapheme, not phoneme, and because it's written. So the letter and then the sound, and then past that, I liked that she splits words based on their code. So what does that mean? So looking at CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant words, with short vowels, and the students have to read 10 words and then 10 nonsense words. And so for each category, so short vowels, consonant blends and digraphs are controlled, vowel E, consonant E, or marker E, vowel teams, and multisyllabic words. And when I did my initial assessment, I saw that about half of my students didn't have their alphabetic code. So they didn't know their alphabet sounds. And as a result, they couldn't read words with short vowels. They couldn't, beyond cat and mat, they weren't able to decode a CVC word. So using this book and some other resources that I'll talk about, I started really following the scope and sequence and going through and introducing different phonemes and graphemes and building on their knowledge. So in this book, Dr. Walpole has different, she splits students based on assessment, so based on their skills. So if they're in a short vowel range, then the lessons are based on that. So reviewing sounds, practicing the graphemes, blending words, decoding words, etc.
Can I just So one thing that I've really liked that you've talked about is the nonsense words and the pseudo words. And I want to take a minute, just in case some of our viewers and listeners aren't familiar with that term. And so a nonsense word isn't just a random string of alphabet letters put together. It's actually a word that meets the requirements for an English word, and it is decodable. So you're asking children to decode words they have the skills for. There's just no associated meaning with this word. It's not currently in the English vocabulary. The reason why I'm saying not currently is I've been doing this for a while, and some of the pseudo words that I've used on assessments years ago, because of the rapidly expanding English language, now have words associated with them or definitions associated with them. So non-word reading or pseudo word reading or nonsense word reading is about getting the students to read words they have the skills to decode, so we can make sure that they're not just memorizing words. They actually understand how to use the alphabetic code. Using it in a screening assessment allows you to assess the skills that they have and they don't have, and practicing them gives them the opportunity to do it with novel words.
There we go. Now, actually something I read recently, because my board is doing a book study with the Art and Science of Teaching Primary Reading by Christopher Such. And this is what I have in the classroom, but the one I'm reading at home is marked up and has highlighter and tags and flags. But he mentioned that students should not be taught nonsense words. So it makes me think and question an activity that I do that I'll explain, but I have to think on that. But I don't know if I'm teaching them as much as we're practicing decoding the words. And so that's something that.
And I think that's an important difference to recognize. We're not asking them to read stories or do this on a regular basis. It's just when we're introducing new grapheme phoneme correspondences and working on some skills that they may have a weakness in, that we are asking them to read the pseudo words, the non-words, or the nonsense words, but it's not something that we're doing on a daily activity and making sure that they can do it fluently. It's just an activity to help with getting that concrete understanding of the concept.
Right. I think I'm okay. We'll see. Something I need to think and process. I need some processing time on that one. So another course that I took last year that I talked about yesterday was the tools for reading, and you can see the sound wall in the background, and you can see the blue slips of paper. So when we come across a sound, let's see. So as I teach my phonics and I introduce a new grapheme, phoneme grapheme. The sound is covered, and then we unlock the sound. And you know, I teach grade 1, 2, mostly 1. It's very exciting for young learners to do this. It's like it's exciting, like they're unlocking a new code. So it's brought some excitement every week or twice a week or however often we're introducing new grapheme phonemes to unlock. And so anyways, the tools for reading course, or lips, kid lips, gives you a say they're covered. It gives you these cards, and the course was great because it talked a lot about the brain science behind it, which I didn't know anything about. And it introduced grapheme, phoneme, morpheme, these terms as well that I really didn't know anything about. And again, I need processing time. It took me a bit over the summer, and even then it wasn't until I started teaching this year and using it with my students and talking with other people that I really started to like grasp and understand the concepts. And I think too, like if we don't understand the concepts, how can we expect our students to? So, you know, the more you use it, and it just becomes part of your normal or your regular vocabulary. Anyways, and on the back they give you ideas of how to say the sound. So where your tongue should be, you know, one that the kids confuse all the time is the TH digraph, voiced and unvoiced. And in spelling, you often see for, and so by having the mask off has helped. And I did wear a clear mask when I was teaching this so that they could see my lips. You know, we have different profiles of students in our class. We have students that come from that are Then our MLLs, they have multi-languages or ESL, depending on what you call it, but lots of languages being spoken. And so they could be learning English for the first time. And so having these cards has been helpful past the course, because I can look and I'm like, oh yeah, it's this, yeah, of course I pulled S, it's an easy one, but it gives you information. I is spelled with the grapheme I in a closed syllable. It talks about closed syllables, open syllables, where it may appear in a word, because sounds don't always, or some sounds, some graphemes appear in certain places in a word over other ones, such as using AI versus AY. AY you typically see at the end of a word versus at the beginning or the middle. Again, it's not an absolute thing, but so these have been great this year.
And what I love about this is that you're not expected to have all this knowledge in your head as you go along. You have that quick reference guide for you to refer to, because it's a lot when you're taking on these new approaches to teaching reading and knowing the articulatory gestures and all the rules, and remembering them on the spot can be tricky, and you want to give them the accurate information. So if you have that card deck in your back pocket or beside you on the desk, you can pull it up and reference it and make sure that you're doing it correctly, as opposed to fumbling your way through and saying, oh, you know what, I'll get back to you about that in a little bit or tomorrow, like when I have a chance to look at that. So what I think is wonderful is you're being honest about your learning journey, and you're not saying, oh, I did this program and I'm perfect. Yeah, I've got it 100% down. I love how you're talking about how you're experimenting with this and learning it along the way, and okay with that. And that giving you the chance to trial and error different aspects.
And decide too, like, I'm really in, I guess, year 2 of teaching structured literacy, and already I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next year, like how I want to tweak, how I want to, and I think, that could be said for teaching in general, just teaching from the same manual over and over. We have, the world changes and our students change, and we need to, best practice is staying current and updated, and, introducing new things and exploring and growing. And so, yeah, so I think it's important to stay current, and not just like fad, but I talked yesterday too, like this is based on science, and perhaps the programs I'm using are new or newer, but other things have been around for a long time, such as Orton Gillingham, which is the other another course that I took last summer. And Orton Gillingham's been around for a very long time, and it is a multi-sensory approach to learning how to read. And so I decided to take my instruction through IMSE, the Institute for Multisensory Education, which is in the States. And I did that because I did a lot of research before deciding what I wanted to do. And it's not the only course out there, and there's could be another one for you. So don't, take my my input as like the only thing, but it worked for me, and that's why I took it. So anyways, the Orton Gillingham uses a scope and sequence using the currently they use the Recipe for Reading. This book cover is like ancient, so they are updating it, IMSE, because when you take the course, they have you write all of these notes. Digraph is 2 letters put together to make one sound. Di equals 2, graph letters. So anyways, so I have all these notes throughout the book, which have been super helpful this year, but they're changing it in June. So I'll have to wait and see what happens. Because I took the course within the last 2 years, I'm able to access the newly updated information. I think it has something to do with blends, because teaching blends is kind of, some people say you teach them as 1 unit, some people say you teach them as 2 units. So currently they have them being taught together. So I'll have to see how that changes. But again, we learn, we grow, we change. So this is my scope that I'm following. And again, like what I said, when I assessed my students, I saw that many of them didn't have the alphabetic code. So we have to look at the alphabetic principle, because if you don't have your, your foundational concepts, it's going to be really hard to learn how to progress and read and decode. So I have this, I can't even remember what it's called, but it's to practice alphabetic principle. So this was free online, and so I'm not going to do it right because I'm facing the camera and I've got spatial trouble. So just getting students to realize and recognize, it's the arc, the alphabet arc, that's what it's called. And so the order that the alphabet comes in, being able to recognize the letters. So and it's much different. So some, I saw this in kindergarten where parents sign their kids up for kindergarten. They're like, they know the alphabet because they can sing the song, but they can't actually recognize the letters, or, they don't have that sense of order. And so that helps. It helps with the reading, because it's not it moves within your memory, so you don't have to spend so much time thinking, hey, what does an A look like? I'm not sure. So by practicing the alphabet arc in kindergarten and in grade 1, and possibly grade 2, depending on your level, your tiered level of students, you're able to increase that alphabetic principle. And I laminated them, but I often use in class, you can use a sheet protector, or I have these folders as well that all of my students have, and you could slip it in here, and I'm sure you could condense it or make a smaller chart so that students.
I've seen it as the alphabet mountain, where it's just like a triangle, and they have it's the same concept, right? Just on a mountain, so it doesn't take that
the whole space
arc, and then you just
need a whiteboard marker, and the students practice. That could be an entry level activity or a warm-up activity, and it's just to get that automaticity, and they have where then there's less letters, so they have to then they have they're not just putting it on top, but they're coming up with the letters. So working on alphabetic principle.
And what I like about that activity is so many children, when you're asking them, where something is in the alphabet, they always default to starting back at A and going through the whole alphabet. But we're actually explicitly teaching that, no, you can actually start at N, NOPQRSTU, which was that example that you had just shown.
Kind of like, so for people, I mean, I think everyone knows, maybe, I don't know, but number talks for math, it's something similar where you practice your counting principles and, all your math skills, so that, if you're skip counting, you can start at 55 and count by 10s or 2s. So it has the same idea, where you have different starting points. And so I've been following the Orton Gillingham program. And so they, for the most part, I don't do everything just because it doesn't work. So, Orton Gillingham, multisensory. So in the classroom, it's I'm not giving every child a sand tray because that's a mess and I just don't have the space. And so we do a lot on whiteboards, whiteboard markers. I have these charts that students have. And so, I have Alconian boxes. So we practice, there we go. See, we practice sounding out words and writing them down in the Alconian boxes. And so this, especially in the beginning when they had never seen something like this before, there was a lot of explicit teaching, tapping out sounds, and to help decode words. I worked a lot on CVC words, maybe too long, and this is my reflecting on myself. I spent until Christmas working on CVC words for the most part, because they needed it. But that being said, when I went back to do my screener before Christmas, my students had all mastered CVC. So they had all of their with the exception, I think, of one student, maybe two, they had their alphabetic plus digraphs and including QU. So, it worked. I saw the I saw the results. I saw the progress. With Orton Gillingham, you review sounds every day, so the phonemes. And so a couple different ways. So I would either do on their whiteboards, write the sound v, v, and they would have to write the letter V. The grapheme V, and we would go through that. So I have a, there it is. I have a clipboard and I highlight the sounds as we go. And so I know what graphemes we've learned and the phoneme graphemes we've learned. And I mean, it's, when you reflect now, May, I'm like, wow, we've done a lot. Like we really have covered a ton. And so, and then I also,
I was going to say that I think it's awesome that you have that just as a quick reference, because there are so many things in your mind. And I think you said you had 21 little bodies in your classroom that you're all managing at once. And so having that quick reference to refer to is great. I also was hoping that you could take a moment and just show one of your Elkin Box's activities, so how you actually do it with your students for those that aren't familiar with them.
Sure. So let's say the word is, I was going to look at my assessment here to just pick a word for myself. Let's say the word is let. So I will say let, or hold on, let me start fresh. Let, how many sounds in the word let? And then the kids tap the sounds. So we do have, each student has a phonics notebook, and in the phonics notebook, they have a bucket of tools. So they have a tapping hand. So we start in the beginning with our tapping hand, one for lefties, one for righties. And we learn how to tap sounds. So let, and I say it, then we say it together, let, and then they say it on their own, let. They tap it, and then we'll see, they know that it's 3 graphemes. So we go to the 3 and we write oh gosh, I can't do this, right? Let. And so they write it. I walk around my room to see, often that I-E is tricky for them. I have this poster back here that I found for free. Makes you grin, and drops your chin. So I try to find these, little sayings and things to help, especially with the short vowels. The short vowels are very difficult. They often are confused. So we spent a long time practicing short vowels. So I have these vowel sticks. I've seen, this is Orton Gillingham, but I've seen these free as well on the internet. So they all have, these tongue depressors, whatever you call them, and craft sticks, and they have all of the vowel sounds. And so I would say, and so the kids have to look at their sticks and they'll say, I says, and then we progress and we go into, oops, here it is. So I've typed up a list of different CVC, or there's VC and CVC words. And so I would say the syllable is odd, and they would have to find their stick and they say, O says ah. So, which is a phonemic awareness activity. So trying to figure out what the vowel sound is and isolate it and find it. So hid, it says, or I says, So we spent a long time in the beginning working through short vowels, and then progressing into being able to write using the Elkonian boxes, our tapping hands, and I borrowed somebody's book. And so did that answer the Elkonian boxes? I've seen
definitely.
people like using chips, like, so they have the different colors. There's lots of these online too. You can find, this is Sandbox Matte, but if you search Alconian boxes, you can find it, and you can find whatever works for you if you choose to use them. People are using the poppets. I'm trying not to get trendy because I just don't.
It's expensive.
Yeah, like, yeah. And I mean, this works just as well. And you don't need yeah, you could buy the sheet protector and it works. You can use counters or chips in your classroom. And so they tap the sound. So, and that A makes a whiny sound when it comes before a nasal phoneme such as M or N. The A changes the sound. So these are some of the things that I picked up along the way, and Tools for Reading talks about it, and through my course with IDA as well. And so, yeah, so we spent a lot, we still do. On a weekly basis, we're practicing high frequency words. So irregularly spelled words, which I haven't talked about yet. And we are practicing words they can decode using the phonemes and graphemes that they've learned. And it's constantly practicing, rehearsing, reviewing. I'm at the point of getting them, and I would start this earlier next year, but putting these words into sentences to help make meaning of the words, which helps with the comprehension piece, and then the fluency when they're reading it as well. So I really, every day it's not just phonics, which I talked about yesterday, which is what people have in their head, right? So we are constantly growing and expanding. Something I don't think I mentioned yesterday, but IMSE has a free link tree. So it will be linked here, but IMSE link tree, you can Google. They have a plethora of free resources that you can get. I grabbed this when we did the Suffix ED. So we practice, and it teaches you the spelling generalization. So when a base word ends in letters T or D, suffix ED is pronounced id. So, and I know, like, my teaching partner, she has an EA who's from Poland originally, and my teaching partner is actually Portuguese, and they both have said, if I had known these, I would have been a better reader. So, and these are adults saying this and learning it for the first time. And so it's
the same thing that I find a lot of teachers and people that are on this journey of discovering more about English, like, why didn't they tell me that in the first place? And as teachers, that's what we're trying to do for the next generation forward, so that they understand this logic behind the language of English and its writing system, because it actually does exist. Yeah. It just hasn't been taught in a while.
And that's where we talked about it yesterday, but I pulled my book out, The Logic of English, which is fantastic because they have all of the spelling generalizations. So, for example, when you drop the E, when you're adding a suffix, when C and G don't make their K and G sound, and Y. And so, and then also as a follow-up to that book, it's the Sounding Out the Sight Words, which is a great resource as well. Like it has the Dolce word, so, and more words to practice. And it also connects games that you can play with the students, and gives you a list of words as well that you can use. So that's regularly pulled out in my room. And then also, in addition, I haven't talked about phonemic awareness. So as I mentioned yesterday, when I first started teaching, I had no idea what phonemic awareness was, really. And so I discovered the Hegarty, which, is much talked about, much debated, because you can look it up. There's like the phonemic awareness wars now, I think, whether it shouldn't, that on one side they say it shouldn't just be oral, and on the other side they're saying or they're saying, I believe that it's that you need to have you have to encode as well. It has to be written. So it's not just oral. So, which is why having whiteboards or something that the kids can use in class is great as well. You can do word chaining or sound chaining to increase their knowledge of sounds. And then, so I started using that last year, and then the board purchased them for people. And then after one of the IDA workshops this year, there were three speech and language pathologists from Ontario, and they have created their own phonemic awareness book. And I like supporting something in Canada as much as I can. So I purchased it. And they have a screener for phonemic awareness as well. And it's almost similar to the Kilpatrick, like the 1 minute phonemic awareness lessons, where you kind of figure out where your students are, and then they give you a list of different sounds and words and activities that you can use. This, I just got this in at the end of March, beginning of April. So I've used it a bit, and I tutor on the side. So I'm using it with the students that I tutor as well. So that's been helpful. And I use a code pack. So what's the code? The code is, or are the sounds, the phonemes that, so depending on what you're working on. So this one is for alphabetic and digraph. I kind of put them together. And so you can build words, and you can incorporate morphology into this. So looking at prefix, suffixes, the meaning behind words. And so and have students in the beginning, they could be recognizing the graphemes and the corresponding phonemes. And then as you go, they can start building words. So a code pack, if you, Emily Moorhead is a phenomenal Ontario educator from Kingston, and she has videos that you can access through IDA, and she talks about the code pack. And so it's similar. Orton Gillingham has large cards, but I like those smaller ones. It's just more feasible for me to have them in a bag. And then I also have my Suffix kit here as well. And so having a code pack where when you're doing small group, we're moving away from like the traditional guided reading groups, not using leveled readers, and towards small group based on skill. And so you are able to review and strengthen your students' abilities. So that's when you pull your tier 2 and your tier 3 students, and you can review your the skill set that they need to be strengthened, and play games or read decodables, which I also have here to show, and whatever you have planned. And other students are engaged in meaningful reading activities, reading with a partner, practicing their fluency. They could be writing sentences, they could be playing games themselves. And so in that way, it's similar to your balanced literacy routines, because so many of us had centers going on. They just may look a little different than what they did. I mean, I saw something on Twitter today about, I think it was from Christopher Such, maybe, about the importance of repeated reading. And what's that, sorry?
Nate Joseph.
Oh, yes, that's what it was. Nate,
yes,
that's who it was, Nate Joseph, sorry. And that we need to still be practicing reading, and that's improving your fluency, like so that your prosody, so that you read how you talk, and learning to scoop words as you go, or scoop phrases, sorry. So you're saying, you don't sound like this, you're taking your sentences in meaningful ways, adding expression. So I want to show my decodable. So I have bins, of decodables. And I did purchase a bunch on my own, but our parent council every year, we're very fortunate, and they dedicate a certain amount of money for books. And in the past, and this is where like I am responsible for this, we have a leveled book cart because of me. And so, but this year we, my teaching partner and I ordered decodables. And it's funny because we had already planned it, decided the books we were ordering, and then our principal came. He's like, this right to read thing, like, should we be buying books? And I'm like, yes, we already did. Like, so it was nice. I mean, it was that he doesn't know much about it, but he knows that that's the way we're headed. And so we had the support from our principal to purchase decodables this year, which was great. So I have, books that I've printed from paper, that from online. I have these are the ones through Haggerty that Emily Gibbons and other authors have written. Flyleaf, which is still available for free online. You can't print them, but you can access them online. And so I've tried to make a conscious effort of bringing in books that use the skill. So these are my marker E-words, and there's different access points. So there's, students who need the simpler text still, but they're able to decode all of these words. And then versus the Flyleaf, which I find they have way more text. So my students who are stronger readers are loving the Flyleaf books, and trying to be conscious of the books that I bring in, so they're representative of the students in my classroom as well. So thinking about the equity piece, and these were ones I printed from online as well. So there's lots out there. Lots of free out there as well for decodables. So yes, I've purchased, but I've also printed and found free books as well. So they are available to you.
The other day, I had a conversation with a teacher from British Columbia named Kathryn Cook, and she had a great idea for her students while she was doing those small group works. She had a decodable book that they were working on and put a sticky note in the back. And they had to get 6 kids in their class that they've read this book to. And then they'd have the opportunity to read it to her. And so that gives them the opportunity for the practice with repeated reading of the text. And then their peers are signing off on them reading the book. And then they have the opportunity to read it with you. She also had their reading buddies that were in 4th grade do some of the work for her too. So when they were working on a book, she got them to read it to their 4th grade reading buddy and got them to sign off on it.
I love it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I thought that's a great resource and a way to get that instructional time in, and having the support of your peers while you still have time to do that small group work with the students at the different levels.
That is fantastic. And they would love, they do love reading, they love reading with a buddy. And so, and that repeated reading and the rehearsing, and even with the older buddy, and even students in the class, when they stumble on a word or they're not sure, that friend is there to be like, oh no, it's actually this. Now they wouldn't just say point to the graphemes, where are the syllables, but they would provide them the word, I'm sure. But yeah, depending on the student maybe, but at least they're getting that correction. So it's, it's not correct, and let's correct it. When we were doing MSV, for our benchmark books, and we're looking at the meaning, the syntax, and the vocab, and so they we wouldn't correct them when they were reading. We would let them keep those errors. And so I know I didn't grab it, it's on my small group table, but I have a page with, I'm trying to think of where it comes from. I can't think of the name, the blog, but just prompts that you can provide students. So, it's not always it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. It's like, so, using, these are the new, instead of the beanie boo approach,
Yeah.
start on the left side of the word, touch the graphemes, blend the sounds, identify the syllables. So there's different approaches to correcting students, and it works. Like when yesterday I had my kids, we were doing a decodable passage and then with follow-up comprehension questions. And it was the first time I released them on their own. Like we've just done it together, helping them build proper sentences, looking at sentence structure. And kids who came to me, I don't know, can you read this? I'm like, no, touch the graphemes. You've got this. You can read it. And they can. And, they touch the graphemes, they say the sounds, they blend it, and they're like, oh, it's whatever it is. And so building that confidence to see that they are capable of reading. And so, each week I introduce new high frequency words. So words that may not be decodable or not decodable yet. So these are words where perhaps we haven't learned the code or the strategy to read it, the long vowels. I've only gotten to open syllable long vowels and marker E so far, but so we'll be touching on a few before the end of the year. But so there are some high frequency words where we just haven't gotten there yet. So talking about, using the heart word strategy, which you can find at Really Great Reading. They have lots of free videos and materials you can access there. And this is not from there. This is from somewhere else, but they're the high frequency words divided by skills. So looking at words with short A, at, an, can, am, and then there's a heart word. So it's not so overwhelming. And then once, depending on how far we get on this sheet, they've got I think it's well over 100 words, high frequency words on top of words they can decode. So it's slowly building on that, and it's not guessing, like knowing that these high frequency words are there for a reason, using S as Z, that many times S at the end of the word sounds like Z. Well, that's not like a rule breaker or something that it may have been called in the past. That's there for a reason. So, teaching these words and the skill and why, and then students, and when they're writing in class, I wrote as, that's S as Z, and they're calling out these spelling generalizations to me. I'm like, yes, you got it, keep going. And so
that's the thing that I love about the heart word approach, and having that opportunity to include incidental phonics within your explicit phonics lessons and program. And what that means is that you are taking the opportunity to use those teachable moments. So if you're teaching the heart word is, you're saying, okay, well, I says eh, we know that. Well, S is a little bit tricky because it's not saying s, it's saying z. Now, we haven't learned that yet, but that's actually another phoneme that the letter S can represent. And then there are going to be some kids in your class, then at that moment, they will internalize that and be able to apply it to other words like has and as, right? And they'll be able to do that right away. So it allows for that little bit of differentiation in the moment while you're still making the lesson accessible for the rest of the class.
Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed too with, I did have students come to me this year who were very good readers already in grade 1, um, and it was a slow start for them because I was reviewing things they knew possibly, or they had just memorized. It's hard to tell in the beginning, but as we've gone on and the skills are becoming more difficult, they may still know how to spell words ending in CK, but they don't know why. So when they've learned that spelling generalization, you just see their face like totally enamored, and they're like, yes, that's why. Like, I have this one student who's like, his printing is impeccable. I envy his printing. He's just beautiful printing. And anyways, and very strong writer and reader. But they had this mentality that if they didn't know how to spell the word, they would erase and think of another word instead. And so by learning the reason behind these ways, it's opened doors for this child. So this child who does have a really high level, like a high number of high frequency words, and great reading skills for memorized words, but once this thing is introduced, like this spelling generalization, then the doors are opening for them. These higher more these students that have more ability in the beginning at this point, and I find like in grade 1, 2, that sometimes it levels out as they get older because, they just came to read earlier, quicker, for whatever reason. But without knowing these rules, then they could get stuck. But now that they know the generalization, they're able to advance more. So you're still able to encourage those students who come to you with greater abilities.
And the one thing that I want to ask you is, how incredible does it feel when you see those little light bulb moments occurring with your students? I mean, I think that K1-2 grade level is so exciting as a teacher, because you get so many of those moments where it suddenly clicks. And I find it so rewarding when you're working with a student and they're like, oh, that's why, right? And as you progress in the years, those occurrences are less frequent and the kids aren't as enthusiastic about it.
It's interesting. Like in the beginning of the year when I do my assessment for writing or whatever, like I give them a sample piece and they have to write whatever it is. And I actually write verbatim in my assessment document what they've written. And so when you reflect back on that now and see like just how far they've come, it's incredible. It really is amazing that they're using that knowledge and building on it and continuously going. I also think like with the leveled readers, that it was always a competition. I'm at level 22, I'm at level 1. And so you don't have that when you're teaching this systematic in this using this explicit approach, because it's whole group. You're more whole group with small group, but everyone gets to be a part of the small group, and you're not reading a level text. You're doing various activities. I still have, I didn't pull these things out, let me just grab it. Just some games, right? Like, so card games. I printed this from the internet. They're it's like Crazy 8. It's by Sound Readers, Martha Kovac. And these are all play again cards. So anyways, so depending on what the skill is that you're practicing, this is the NK, NG, and so they have to say the word, match the sound, make a sentence, and you have these tools and you're able to practice the skill. You're not just reading a leveled book and answering questions. And, there's a time and place for comprehension questions, of course. But then you're able to get into more content-based topics for comprehension, and not always depending on the leveled books, which, are limiting with things. I have the junior learning. I believe it's Junior Learning has amazing products as well. So building words with different sound patterns. And the other game that my kids love, and they took it upon themselves. It was sitting on the shelf. And I thought, oh, there's a lot of vowel teams. There's a lot of things that we just don't know how to do yet. So I left it. They asked if they could play. I'm like, sure. They made up their own rules. And it was great because they were spelling words they knew how to spell. And they'd come to me, is this spelled properly? And, so they're using those skills without even knowing the rules of the game and playing. So this is great for them. The confidence has been built, and I'm giving them the foundational skills to continue going.
That's amazing. And I think it's incredible. I mean, you've said that you've been on this journey for about 2 years now, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. And I'm sure you've invested a huge amount of time, but it seems like you've had enjoyment and you're seeing the benefit of doing this learning in your students. And your students are so lucky to have a teacher like you who's putting the time and effort to really figure it out and make sure that your teaching strategies are effective for all of them. And you're taking the time to track their progress.
I really I brought up leveled readers a lot, but I mean the balanced literacy approach where a student would be stuck on level whatever 3, 4, 5, like late kindergarten, early grade 1, and I wouldn't know how to help them really, memorize more words and it didn't make sense at the time. Reflecting back at the time, I was like, I don't know what to do. They're going to go to Empower in grade 2 and they'll be fine. Or, there really wasn't, and that's not an okay attitude, but that's the one I had. And now, I can see where they're stuck on a specific skill. And so you're able to practice and rehearse that skill and bring it into reading and bring it into writing. And then once they've mastered that skill, then there's progression. And so, and then when they're reading books, any book you put in front of them, I could put a picture book in front of my students, and they may not have the whole code, but they're able to get through parts of the book now. And whereas they couldn't before, they could look at the picture and, orally tell a story, which has a purpose at some point in time. But they have those tools, those building blocks to continue going. So I am able to make progressions with my students, whereas before, if they got stuck on a level, they were stuck on a level, and you were kind of at a loss as to how to move them. So yeah.
Before we go, what would your advice be to a teacher in the position that you were 2 years ago before you started this journey?
I would start with a book. Pick a book. The art and science of teaching primary reading, or I think the differentiated lessons is a good one. Pick a book that aligns with structured literacy and read it and take time to digest because it's a lot, and it's a lot of learning. And like you say, I'm still growing and figuring things out. And do I have it right? Perfect? No, I'm constantly guessing what I'm doing and trying to think of different strategies and how to support my students. But I would really, I would look at a reading resource and read it and try to digest it. I think I really like the art and science of teaching primary reading because it's not too heavy. It's practical. There's practical applications and it makes sense. And then maybe try to talk with colleagues or get on social media, Twitter or Facebook. There's the Ontario Science of Reading, Canada Science of Reading, Kindergarten Science
Initiative.
Right to Read initiative, and listen to podcasts as well, right? Like I mentioned yesterday, I've listened to a ton of your podcasts, and I've learned so much just from listening to podcasts as well. And the experts and the teachers, and I've tweeted at was it Una Malcolm, I think, that you had on, and she talked about something, and I sent a question and she answered back to me right away. And Madame Lockhart on Twitter as well, Kim Lockhart, I've asked her questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions. People are, there's a wealth of knowledge, and I think, like, with my teaching partner and other people, like I'm really invested in helping because I've seen the results, and I want other people to get excited and be passionate about this too. And so read something and ask questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Michele. And for those of you watching or listening on a podcast, you can look to the description of this episode to get more information about the resources Michele mentioned and her Twitter handle.
Thank you very much.
Take care.